All right, so we'll come to standing, and you might often begin with a little shake. It's morning for me. I know it's not morning for everyone or the same time in the morning. It did have a little bit of movement, but even though shaking has been part of my life for literally 15 years, I think I grow more and more appreciative of it. And so today I want us to really focus on the down, the release part. Sometimes we can go up, just feel down and start to feel even how the shake is giving you information about how your foot is meeting the ground, what parts of your foot are receiving the weight, which are maybe heavier, which are lighter. And we want that shake to gently touch or travel or have a little moment in all the parts of the body. With this focus down, it's like you're letting it go, like drain. So if you have any parts that tend to hold more, for me, maybe my right shoulder, I'm going to put a little more attention, but not effort, a little more attention to see if I can get that downward feeling all through the tissue in the front and the side and the back. For just a few more moments, playing with your position, your orientation to gravity. And notice that we can't have just the down. The up is the response. So we have this oppositional give and take we're going to be playing with a little bit today too. And to feel free, if you're finding some real good juice, you could stay with that longer or just slowly let it come to smaller, softer, a bit of stillness. And then eyes down or close your eyes. And be curious if you can feel the beat of your heart inside your body. If and when you find it, be curious if you can feel it in multiple places. Take a few moments to inquire where you can feel that pulse. And this inner felt sense is called interoception, which has a profound balancing effect on the nervous system. So when we talk about the downward flow today, Apana, don't know if that made that recording. So the downward grounding, interoception has that similar effect. When you're ready, open your eyes and feel now the soles of your feet, but also from inside of your feet. So we're still in this inner felt sense. And just shift your weight a little bit. So one foot might be a little different imprint on the ground, but then also feel into your ankles. There's nothing to see. She's blocking the view. You don't need to see. But I want us to start to feel like we are a shape that is unkinked like a hose. So through the ankle into the foot, we have this flow of force because of gravity. And we're just going to shift around. It's very internal, simple. We're going to add to this. But inside the joint, can you feel that it's even, this downward flow of your relationship to gravity. We're going to take this up through other joints, but if you ever get confused, you can come back, to just that contact with the ground. And anytime we move, I'd like to encourage a real relaxed, empty foot. So we're not preparing our foot to grab the floor. We're like so released that we're just going to feel it kind of melt and receive. And then let's start to think of that coming up the chain. The hip is where it's going to get really interesting. And feel like the evenness of this pouring goes through your knee without overwork or stretch on either side or front and back. Sometimes you can just focus on one leg, kind of cycling through. You can play with the other leg. And you can play with varying heights. So if we flex, we're going to engage more, but we still want to feel it's even. And this evenness, when we are thinking of how the joints relate, how force flows through a joint, is really key to alignment from the inside. So let's go up to the level of the hip. So we have our leg bone, femur, into the hip socket, and it's round where it meets. So play with just one leg and start to pour into one leg as you change your torso angle to that leg. So I can face, I can turn away, I can go up, and really tune in to how little shifts in the angle change what you feel around the hip in all sides. There's a different map. Shake it off a little bit, and then we'll change sides. I was in a class yesterday. One of the things that I really love is I'm like insatiable as a learner. I'm in like 4 movement trainings or classes right now of different types. And this was on the floor. And this teacher, Marlo, she's amazing. She said, let go of the need to know what's right and wrong, and let go of the idea that there's a form, the need to show. So anything that's like outer or right, wrong, we're really in the feeling, in the investigation, while you're aware of your whole and your breath. You're still aware of the ankle and the knee. Last maybe 2 or 3, and really start to change, like what sensations do I feel when I'm orienting in a different way over that? Shake it off anytime you want. A little touch is also good. So what we're looking for is also this idea of centration. Centration is the perfect, wonderful nesting of the joint surfaces so that force can flow through. Gravity's always going down. That's our easiest place to feel. And we're going to play with that in a few different ways, and I'll talk about it as we go. We're going to balance. You can hold on to something on one leg, and we're going to free the other leg. And what that means could be different for you. So it could be like really small and loose, or you can really play with the range. And I want you to feel, even though it's not 0, where is the easiest, sweetest, freest place? And don't look at what I'm doing to, to copy, maybe get ideas. And put your mind in this top hip, even though your bottom hip is like, ooh, I'm getting stronger. And just notice where you tend to move, where it's most open, least effort. Gather some information about that. And then we'll change sides. Feel free to hold on. Let it be really like loose, aware of your breath. We have another friend joining us. So that we're looking for the easiest place, because centration, this joint surface alignment, when force goes through, everything around collaborates, and it tends to feel the most efficient, sometimes almost boring. So if you're like, I don't know what I'm feeling, you're actually probably getting some good information about where it feels kind of boring. One side is probably different than the other. Let your upper body respond. All right. Same inquiry on the standing leg. So we're going to stay there longer and the muscles are going to be engaged. It'll give more information. You can hold on. And I suggest having the bottom knee a little bent or more, but not locked. So that's a through, force flowing through. And we're going to play with moving on top of the leg bone. So it's this circular head of the femur. Think about kind of going around. And even though it's going to work, where does it feel the sweetest? Even if you can find one moment, where does it feel the most collaborative? Thinking of flowing down with gravity into the ground. Shake off if you're feeling your ankles working for that too. And then the other side. Again, hold on to something if you like. Feel the flow through your foot, your ankle, your knee, and then moving on top. It could be slow. And any of these little pieces could be a longer element of a practice. So if you feel like, oh, I was getting some interesting information, come back to it. And also, we don't want to disconnect the flow down below. So if my hip feels good, but my foot's leaning out or losing the ground, I want to rethink and come back to the foot first. Okay, shake it off a little bit. Let's try that in the upper body. So we're not going to go on the ground. This is where you might have a chair. You don't have to. You might have other furniture. You might have a wall. I actually don't have that much wall with these like paintings. So I have this chair. And what I want us to feel is the wrist, the elbow, the shoulder through as we lean. So even though it's not down, we can lean into the wall and change our torso. We could lean onto an object at any kind of angle and think about pouring, 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 and then pushing away. So we have the pouring down, which is a releasing receptivity. And then we have a pushing away, but we're also pushing kind of down. Well, the wall's not down, but we'll see when we get to the floor. We're going to feel that gravity and then pushing away. I'm going to let you just decide if you want to keep on one side or if you want to keep changing. And notice where the orientation of your axial body, your center, in relation to the support of your arm changes what you feel. And again, we're looking for distribution, contribution, collaboration, ease may be boring. If you push a lot, so I'm pushing a lot, it might not look like it. The tone is there, but there's no major stretch. It's really shared, so it's kind of not that interesting, like to my brain thinking I'm getting a stretch. That's where it's actually healthy. And it's an ongoing investigation. To me, this is really the treasure of yoga practice is the inward feeling. And if we think too hard about where we're placing from the outside, we can get out of the body and into the brain, into the monkey mind. Maybe like 10 more moments. Also take note of places where there might feel like a traffic jam, or if you feel any stretch that's intense. Are you still breathing? And I want to show something, but I want to encourage you to keep moving. You don't have to stop. But this centration idea, because our joint surfaces are curved, tend to be at oblique angles for both the hip and the arm. So a last few moments as you're moving around, maybe also notice in your hip, I'm kind of at an oblique angle. I'm not squared off. Just notice if that might be where you're feeling the effortless ease for the last 3 or 4 breaths. This is a concept we're going to play with a lot over time, but I want you to just be like in a bit of an explorer sensibility for it today. And one piece to kind of make that point for our hips. Now, this is a little different for everyone, but go ahead and place one foot straight ahead, hands on your hips, square yourself off. With your knee totally locked, shift forward. You don't have to go that far. You could. And I want you to just feel if it feels even through the ankle, knee, and especially the hip, or if you feel any very clear stretches anywhere, or anything that's really working, or anything that's not working, or anything that's traffic jammed. Come on up. Let's try shaking out that foot, emptying the foot, letting it land wherever it wants to land. Bend your knee, think of pouring down. And then as you pour down, just have a little reach forward and back. And don't worry about squaring your hips. They will probably go in a slight oblique. And see if you can find that it feels a little bit sweeter. Let's try the other side. Another way to test this out, straight ahead, square, locking the knee, test it out, is to try to move once you're there. Little pulse. For me, I feel a big stretch on the outside of the hip and a bit of discomfort in my sacrum and my low back. And like my knee and my ankle are gripping. You can come down or you can just let it shift. Don't worry about the square and think about the pouring through and the reaching on top. And for me, I feel my lifted leg glutes firing in a good way. And the bottom leg feels like actually doesn't have that much to say. Okay. Give them a little round of applause. Let's take our feet wide. Push into your feet. Feel that come up through your heart, your eyes, and then bend your knees and wave your spine. And just push into your feet and see if you can feel the rest of you rise from that and wave down. Push into your feet. Let's play with that with a few different positions. Maybe take a step and wave down. So we're giving into gravity. And then the rooting and the whole body follows. Try a different orientation around your legs. Push down and the body follows. It's like a slow-mo monster walk. You guys know monster walks with the loop stretchy band. The lazy monster, maybe we could call it. Maybe two more. Really just focusing on letting gravity take you. How low is up to you, and then the rooting to be able to come up. And then the next one or two, we'll make it down to the ground. And let's just find the cross-legged that we're unattached to. Meaning to say we could shift our legs around. We don't have to pull them in. Maybe even the leg in front could come up. So this is just going to be a choice for you. And we're going to take our arm, shake it off, empty. Same as our foot, our hand is going to be empty. We're not going to go prepare for anything. We're just going to see what lands, pour, and then push away. And play with that at some different places. Now, our shoulder joint is much more open than the bones. We have a lot more range of motion. We still have a place that's more collaborative. So see if while you pour through the joints, how your torso naturally responds where it feels really even. The sensations are even, and then push through. You might also play with not only where on the floor, but the rotation of your hand and see where it doesn't feel even or it doesn't go through. I'm noticing when I'm back turned out, it just stops at my elbow. I can't feel it come up. We're a little different, all of us, but the tendency is this slightly forward quadrant is going to feel the sweetest. It's not the only possibility, but notice my torso wants to turn if I go back. Let's try the other side. So I would switch the leg in front, whether it's just on the ground or foot to the floor. We are going to lean. You get a little more lean with your foot on the floor. Going inside the hose of your arm. Releasing downward and then pushing downward. You might also notice if there's any place that's trying, that's really like gripping, that stops that flow. This is a different way to think about flow than we probably often do. Empty your jaw. If you find something interesting, you might kind of put a little ripple through it while you're there. Simplicity for the new moon. Last few moments. And then switch the leg again. Same exploration. Now also notice what else is on the floor. So padded parts are a good suggestion rather than bony parts. We're all a little different in that respect. And we could also put more of us on the floor. So leaning, noticing where the weight shifts on your leg. Maybe leaning more forward, how much support is in one arm and the other. Maybe letting yourself move around that. Maybe keeping it just simple like we did before. So a little bit more free form, but feeling the pouring through and then pushing away, pouring through, pushing away. Maybe changing sides. Just for like 1 minute of seeing how we can dance with gravity, be a container for the information that gravity gives us. How do we even shift sides? Where are we on the ground? Can we really lean into it and push away with our leg? How might that flow up from the lower body? Again, if you're like, I don't know, keep it simple. We're getting so much benefit just from the interoception, the inner felt sense. Empty your jaw. And then start to come back to something seated. And let's just give a little space for our breath because we're going to go into breath. Stretch overhead. You can go to the side, you can go up, you can go to the angle. Notice where you feel that and how you want to aim it. And then whenever you find your stretch, what's on the ground, push it down just a little bit. How much can vary. Breathe from the inside. And when you're ready, change sides. Feeling the yawning quality and the exploration of the volume of your body, a little rotation, a little play with angles. There's probably 1,008 options, and you're going to choose just one for today. Once you choose it, push a little down into whatever's on the ground, your seat, that opposite leg. Breathe inside of it. And then come on up. If you need to get a warm layer, you can grab it. And we're going to feel for the movement of our breath. So we're very simple today. I hope it's grounding and sweet. Here's where a little feedback could be helpful for our breath. So whatever's easy, fabric, stretchy band. I usually use a stretchy band, so I'm going to use a fabric. Everything is a little different interface. Texture gives different information. And if you have that, you're going to wrap it around your ribs. And if you don't, you're going to put your mind around your ribs. You can also use your hands a little bit in a way that's relaxed. We're upright to gravity. In that position, where is your breath movement? We're really going interoceptive. The breath is such a tool, and there's all kinds of patterns and breath work, but just the awareness is the first place to begin. I invite you for 2 or 3 to push a little bit extra so you can get that feeling. Relax your jaw. And then after you get the feeling, let the breath breathe easy and see if you can still observe a little movement. We're going to change our position to gravity and see how we might experience a different placement of the movement of breath or a different balance of that movement. We'll take our legs out in front, maybe give your ankles some circles, and then lean to one side and sweep your legs to our zigzag position, foot to thigh, back toes pointing in. If your ankle feels that a lot, you just lean away and take some of that flow of gravity out of your ankle. And then we're going to pour over the more forward leg. Maybe we're going to lean on our hands. So we have this flow of gravity through the arms. Where is it really easy? Maybe we'll come down to the forearms, maybe one of each. Maybe there's a pillow there, a block, or maybe we support our head. So we're in a different relationship to gravity. And I just want you to feel everything on the ground first receive, release downward. See if you can feel the positioning where you're really in a support without effort or minimum effort. And observe, where do you feel your breath movement? Could be entirely different places. And see if as you exhale, you can almost give into the ground a little more. You're welcome to make changes in your shape. How can you be more of a fluid relationship to gravity? How does any maybe squeeze on the body move where you feel your breath? Or how does your facing downward change where you feel the breath? One more. When you come out, think of pushing down to come out, pushing away. And we'll switch sides. Think of what's on the ground, lean into it to free something else. And we'll go to the other side. Again, if anything feels like it's getting too intense, you lean away. Same thing on the other side, which might be a little different. Do we want to support with the hoses of the arms? How does that feel? Very even in the shoulders. Do we want to come down? Do we want to experiment? Sometimes putting a little wiggle jiggle through can help you feel like, oh, is that really distributing force flow downward? If your neck is effortless holding your head up, you might enjoy just keeping the head free or giving it a place to land because it's quite heavy. It's interesting to feel how the weight of your head pours through the joints. When you find a sweet spot, every contact point on the ground is releasing heavier, and notice the movement of your breath. Where do you feel it more or less? Get fascinated, get curious. No one else is inside of your body experiencing this. Two more breaths. And when you are ready to move, instead of thinking of lifting something, think of pushing something down or something else to lift. And as you shift, feel where you pour your weight so something else can move. And we're going to stay in this exploration of where the breath is moving in a side lying position, which could be a fetal position. It could be more extended. It could also be propped with a pillow between or for your head, maybe between your knees. But we want to have one side on the floor or whatever you're on. So your arm could be overhead, you could have a pillow, you could be a little bit kind of falling to your belly. There's so many. So just find one where it's really landing and comfortable. Noticing that some clothing is less comfortable on your ribs, but we do our best. Again, feeling that you can really pour into every contact point. There's not that far to go, right? But it's still that feeling. And just like 5 or so breaths. Where do you feel the breath? How did it change based on now contact, but also orientation? Now we're far more horizontal, but also less upright, less postural muscles might change what we feel. Do you feel more feedback where there's pressure, or do you feel more freedom where there's not? We're going to go to the other side, but see if even here, this close to the ground, you can really make it about pouring into gravity. You could go so many ways to get there. You could go through your belly, you could go to your back, but whatever you're doing, you're going to pour and push so something else moves. And you're going to feel where you can let weight go and change by pushing something down to move something else, which is really a way that force is flowing through in a different angle and orientation. You might find yourself in a very different situation, which is okay. Doesn't have to match. There's a lot of interesting studies out there about the experience of pain and the experience of pain going away. The nervous system, it's kind of like a placebo effect. Just giving it different information shakes it up out of the pain pattern often. It's far less binary and mechanical and, this particular solution for this particular ailment when it comes to the body than we think. So it doesn't have to match. But we're going for the quality of down and release and contact. And we're going to see how that affects us for the rest of the day. The quality of interoception, feeling the movement of your breath wherever it is now. Notice if there's any place that's holding and blocking. For like 1 or 2 more breaths, and we'll come onto our back in the same kind of idea. Like, how can we use gravity to do that? So if there's any movement, how can it be a releasing or a pushing rather than a lifting? Just let our legs come long. And we're going to finish with one sweet somatic exercise. Somatic just means of the living body. So what we've already been doing is somatic. And we'll count this as our Shavasana or integration because it's very internal and soft. With the least amount of effort, we're going to bring one foot to the floor with our knee bent. And so even before you do that, what's the least effort to initiate? and then follow that through to bring a foot to the floor. And then release and feel your footprint. And some of us might have experienced this in the past. We're going to think of pushing into the footprint like 2% and feel what happens in your leg. And then let that go. And then we're going to push into our footprint 5%. Feel what engages, feel what responds. And then we're going to let that dissolve and let go. Little by little, a tiny bit more each time. Down through the foot, the force is going to flow up the leg and then start to affect that hip, maybe lifting off the ground. And when we release, we feel more contact on the ground and a pouring back to empty. And very simple, no rush. A little more each time. Track inside yourself. There's a flow of tone through the tissue that travels up. There's a flow of force going through the joints that travels up. And release. I'm noticing some gurgling digestion sounds. If you are, that's your rest and digest nervous system, parasympathetic, appreciating these qualities. Empty the effort everywhere in your face and your jaw. And maybe start to even feel that pouring beyond your hip. Track it through your body. If it's starting to go up around the level of your diaphragm, you might want to move your arms. You have permission to explore how you're laying. But the only action is the push and the follow. And the release. Two or three more. Ooh, if there's any yawns, sometimes that's your nervous system too, appreciating these qualities. There's no rush, but whenever you're ready to change, we're going to let that foot kind of just slide away and let your leg fall, and it might fall kind of heavy. Before going to the second side. Least effort to bend the knee and place your foot to the floor. Notice that will probably arc around the curve. It's the ball and socket. And then you just feel your foot and then you give a little push. Almost imperceptible at first. And a little more each time. Inside yourself with your mind. Noticing what's leaving and returning to the ground. When we push and support, we free up other things. And release, we can release lots of parts, lots of moments of contact. Quality of slowing down, being internal, releasing and pushing, so both downward qualities. And have this wonderful grounding effect on our mind and our emotions and our whole energy. About 10 more moments on this side. Also noticing if it feels different and not mentally how, but the qualitative how. If your arms want to play with different placements. Maybe MDSI. The last two or three. And whenever you feel complete, you can let that foot slide out and the weight of your leg fall to the floor. And just taking a moment to feel the whole body on the ground. Yeah. You're welcome to stay here in the sweet, cozy peacefulness of your own home if you've really dropped in. Or we can come back with a big full body yawn, stretching the fingers and toes and everything in between. And then every time we come up, we have an opportunity to make it easier and more interesting. Interesting does not mean complicated. So, whenever you do come up now or later, how can you come up by using gravity rather than pulling away from it? Push to move something else. Feel your support lean into it. Push down to move something else. Thinking of rounding corners. We're going to come all the way up to standing because why not? Push to move something else. Shift your support. Push to move something else. Give yourself a little jiggle. I don't ever want to leave us completely uh, non-functional. So if you feel like you went really low and you need to move into an active part of the day, give a little shake or tap to kind of bring the nervous system back to our wakeful place. And if you do have time to go down and in, you can. And the new moons might be in this kind of realm, but we are going to also get some activity too. Let's just close it with a touch anywhere that your body's calling. Heart, belly, heart, maybe a place that was like, oh, I don't know. I needed a little attention. And just that feedback of receiving from the body and giving from your hands. See if how your standing can be in this evenness of flow through all the joints into gravity so that you're buoyant with ease. And just appreciation from and through and to yourself. Thank you for being here. Happy new moon.